You can start a phone flipping business today with no experience or knowledge. Let me break it down. This right here is an iPhone 14. I paid $360 for this, and I'm gonna be able to resell this for about at least 500 bucks, right? Making a $100 profit. So pretty simple. In this video, I'm gonna teach you exactly how to get into the phone flipping business and how to be able to scale into your next venture. So if it's your first time here, my name is Hanny, and I make content around entrepreneurship, personal development, and how to start various side hustles. So I got started doing all this about almost 3 years ago now, right? And how I stumbled upon this side hustle was just me, curiosity mindset, going on YouTube, discovering other people that are doing the same thing, and just sort of just like, implementing it and then adding my little twist and just different experiences and being able to take action and get started into the business model. So if it's your first time getting started in this business, don't worry, I'm going to show you the exact steps. So number one is we're going to identify what platforms we're going to use, right? So in the phone business, if you're in Canada, we have Facebook Marketplace and we have Kijiji, right? If you're in the States, it's probably OfferUps or different other platforms you can use, right? So what we're doing pretty much in this business, it's arbitrage, right? We're buying devices low, we're going to resell them for high. I always tell people, like, if you have no money, for example, what you can do is literally just look around your house, right? Find devices that you think could be sold, because when I first got started, literally what I did was I looked around my house and I had a bunch of like 3 phones laying around the house. I took those 2 phones and I sold them and I was able to generate profit, right? So for you could look around the house and see if you got any electronics to resell them. If you have nothing, what you could do is you can go on platforms. We're going to use Facebook Marketplace to go make offer ups or negotiate for deals. So what we're going to do typically here is you're going to go on the marketplace, you're going to go on the iPhone section, you're going to search up iPhones, right? How I look at devices here is that I pretty much look at the market and I see how much phones are going for, right? And I don't really like try to guess on which is the best device. I just make an offer on everybody, right? So how you can make this actually, there's a toggle switch on Facebook, right, where you can go and actually make a settings where you can make automated sending out message, right? You can find it somewhere in the settings where you can literally have a typed out message, or people could just, every time you negotiate for a deal, if you see a phone, it's automatic. Pretty much how I text everybody is simple. I always mention, hey, I run a business, right, which is Hanny Mobile, right? I mention what I do, and then I tell them I buy used and damaged electronics and iPhone, Samsungs. Pretty much I tell them, if I was to pay you cash today, would you take a lower offer, right? And so here what I'm waiting for is to see if somebody's going to respond back. And I typically do this for about 30-50 messages a day. What I'm looking for here is pretty much I'm looking for someone to respond back, right? You're looking for someone to opt in. And then if somebody might message you back saying, okay, how much lower? Like, how much are you offering, right? So now you got to get the conversation started. So this is what you want to do, right? This is how you make offer ups. Ultimately, you don't want to like just message 2 or 3 people. You want to automate your message to where you can message at least 50 people, because you're looking for a conversion. So if you can get like 10 devices in return, that's going to be a good return, right? So how do we know what devices to buy, right? I get this question a lot. So pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to price match, right? So say for example, you search up an iPhone 12, right? And you search this up on the marketplace, you see an iPhone 12, right? It's going for about 400. You see 400 multiple times, right? So it depends on which state you're in. Where I am in Canada, right? So what I do is I look at resellers, other people who are in the same business as me, to see how much they're selling it for, right? So if I see 400 a lot, that means that these comparables are true. So that means I gotta buy this device for at least 200 or 300 bucks so I can resell it for 400 bucks, right? So the goal is to pretty much look at other people to see how much they're selling it for. And you can also do this on eBay as well too, right? You can go on eBay and do sold items, right, and be able to price match and look at how much people are selling it if you're in the States, and then get the comparables there, right? So pretty simple. Now you buy a device, it depends on which one you buy. I always look at it like this: if you have low capital, if you don't got a lot of money, you can start as low as an iPhone 8, which is, you can buy that device for 70 bucks, or you can buy an iPhone XR for 170. These are still reselling for about 240, right? Depends on which market you're in, right? Or you can buy an iPhone 11 for about 150, and you can still sell this for about 250 to 300 bucks, right? Different way to go about it, but you can start off low, right? You don't have to go and buy an iPhone 14 Pro Max or a 15 Pro Max, right? Once you buy a device, so you're gonna go on the market, say you see an iPhone 12, you negotiate down to say 200 bucks, right? So now you're talking to the seller. This is what you got to do. When the seller is messaging you, okay, you want to find out more information on the phone, you tell them, okay, is this device yours? Is it fully paid off? Like, how did you get the they're gonna tell you, oh, I'm just upgrading, I'm just selling it because I need some money, right? You want to find out what's their motivation, right? This is the key, right? Because if we don't know what their motivations are, we can buy a device that might be blacklisted, right? So, and then we're gonna get the IMEI number. We're gonna ask the seller, can I get the IMEI number to make sure the device is unlocked? How you can check this? You can go on platforms like SigW. This is what I typically use, right? And it gives you, there's a free trial you can use for a couple of days to be able to check these phones. Use SigW to check that device, right? Make sure that it's the same device he's trying to sell you, right? It could tell you if it's blacklisted, what the make and the model is, and if it's unlocked. Once we run all these items, now we can go on to our next step, which is now we're gonna go and meet the seller, right? So pretty much we're gonna go meet the seller, and we tell the seller, hey, if they want to meet, say for example, we tell them we want to meet at public location. I always advise things like McDonald's, police station also works, right? You don't want to meet this person at like in a back alley, right? This is probably red flag number one. So you want to make sure that the seller is talking to you, and you both set a place to go meet. So when you go check out this phone, you're going to meet them in person, right? You look at the device. Typically, if a person says there's no scratches, no nothing on the phone, we clarify that in person. We see the condition, and then this is where you be able to negotiate and get a better price. If it has a lot of scratches or if it has issues on the phone, you can tell the seller, hey, you know what's going on, I thought you told me that this device was good, right? So you be able to get this device now for $150. So it just depends on how you go about it, right? I always break it down like this. Online, you don't really know the emotional aspect of things, but in person, if you go there meet the seller, you can be able to negotiate down even lower, right? So you don't, when you're making offer ups, you don't need to lowball everybody, right? Because at the end of the day, once you go meet the person, right, and you're fast, right? Because the end of the game in this business is speed, right? If you get fast, right, you go get to the seller right away, right, and you be able to negotiate and get to know him and find out who he is, right? He's gonna be able to give you a better price, right? That's one thing I really learned about negotiating, is that we don't need to like message over online, right? We need to go and meet the person, and then we be able to get a better deal, right? So boom, so now you met the person, right? You got the device, everything is good to go. So now the next step is you're gonna get the phone, right? Make sure it's clean, if everything is good, you're gonna go back on the marketplace, you're gonna go try to sell the device, right? So pretty much we're gonna go back on Facebook, and how we're gonna sell this device, like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna do comparables, right? Like I mentioned, if we know the device is selling for $400, we're gonna go and list it for $400. Once we go post it on marketplace, right, we're gonna wait a little bit. The game is simple here, man. You gotta be patient. You know, I think a lot of people want the quick riches, they want to make money right away, but in any business model, it takes time, right? You know, like for me, when I first got started, you know, my first like 2 devices that I sold, it took almost like 4 weeks, you know, almost a month to sell those items, but I was willing to be patient, right? It's gonna take a little bit longer. Sometimes the item might not sell right away. Maybe the market is down a little bit, you know, maybe people are not buying right now, right? So there's different scenarios where it can happen, but if you're patient, someone eventually will buy your device. It's inevitable, right? Because there's always a buyer out there for anything. As long as you buy it at a good price, someone is willing to buy, right? So boom, now you list it on the marketplace, you wait a little bit, right, and now you might find a buyer. So what you're gonna do is, once you take this money, right, once you sell it, for example, if you make $50, and here's how I look at it: whenever you're selling your device, we always want to aim for about $50 to $100 profit, right? Especially in the beginning, you don't want to be too greedy, right? Because here's the thing, you don't want to make $500 when you're first getting started, right? Because the key here is what you don't have a lot of capital. If you're using anywhere from $100 to $500, you want to be able to turn around your money real quick, right? You want to make quick profits to reinvest back into the business, right? This is a mistake a lot of phone flippers make, which is they want to make a lot of money when they're first starting, and then they wonder why they're holding on to their products or their phones a little bit longer, right? The key is to be able to turn around, to be able to sell your device right away to reinvest back into the business. That's all to me to go, right? And this is how I was actually able to scale my business to a little over 5 to 10K a month. You know what I mean? You know, I was able to, you know, meet a lot of sellers, right, to sell me their devices, and then be able to, you know, sell my phones much quicker. Eventually, at the end, I was able to get into wholesaling. Now we're working with a lot of business owners, right? So for you, it's important to understand that you want to sell your devices quick to reinvest back into the business, right? So once you do this, now what you're gonna do is you figured out a little bit about the business. Now you're scaling a little bit, you're making a little bit of money. Here's what most people forget. This part is very important, right? Every time you're making money in the business, you want to be able to track everything you're doing, right? This is key. I think when I first got started, I was a little bit, you know, because here's the thing, in this business model, it's a lot of cash transactions, right? So if you're carrying a lot of cash, you need to be able to track everything that you're doing, right? So whether you have a spreadsheet, whether you have some type of Google Notes or, you know, Apple Notes, whatever, you want to make sure you're tracking everything you're doing, because you don't want to make money. Say for example, you make $500 this week, but you don't keep none of that money, right? So you need some type of tool to be able to have everything saved into your dialogue, right? So that's the most important one, right? And then also understanding your expenses. How much money are you actually spending each month? Like, what is your rent? How much is your vehicle? What is your insurance, right? Different things like that to be able to know. So when you decide, hey, you know, I actually making a good amount of money in this business, how am I able to actually quit this and go full time, right? Once you find out that number, right, Now you're going to tell yourself, okay, how many devices do I need to buy each month to be able to do this again, right? Because the key in this business is simple. You want at least 100 phones to 200 to 500 phones a month. If you really want to scale this to $10,000 to $20,000 a month, that's the most important thing, right? It's inventory. If you don't have inventory, you're not going to make money in this business. It's simple, right? This is why people who get into this business, they're afraid to spend money. But you got to remember, scary money don't make no money, right? You got to be able to spend your cash to make more money, right? That's why money is ultimately a tool. A lot of people have this misconception. They don't want to spend $10,000, $20,000 to make $10,000 or $30,000, right? You have to spend money. And in this business model, phone flipping, it's capital intensive, right? We're spending anywhere from 50K to sometimes even 60K a month to generate 20, 30. I'm willing to do that because I know that at the end of the day, either I'm going to have this money in phones or either I'm going to have this money in the bank, which is not going to do anything for me. If I put it in the bank, I'm probably going to get 0.000 interest on my money, right? So that's the goal. So boom, now you establish a little bit of credibility, you got some money going for you. So once you start doing this, right, now you want to scale up even more. What I like to do now is I do wholesaling, right? This is the next step. Most people want to scale their money, right? You're gonna get to a point where now you're meeting a lot of people, right, and you're doing a lot of volume. Now people are gonna start coming to you for phones, and I think this is where I was able to actually scale my business and be able to actually go full time, because I realized I figured out my expenses, I figured out how much money I was making, but I realized, okay, when it's a little bit slow, when the market is not going well, how do I able to create more wins in the marketplace, right? So I started going out there, I started connecting with business owners in my community. I went out there in the marketplace, I started looking for people who are doing the same thing, and I'm like, hey, how can I help you advance in your business, right? So the key here is you want to help more people so you can get paid in the end, right? Because a lot of people have this misconception, they only want to make money for themselves, but you forget, if you help more people, you're going to get whatever it is that you're looking for, right? This is why I believe in wholesaling. And so for me, what I started doing was I started going out there and networking and meeting people who are doing the same stuff that I'm doing, right, to be able to help them and get the products and the items they want, so I'm able to scale up even quicker, right? So I started going out there, I started telling people what I do, started making cold calls, right? So if you want to get started in wholesaling, you got to find phone shops and resellers out there, right? And in the beginning, a lot of people are not going to want to do business with you because you're brand new in the marketplace. No one wants to trust you, but here's the thing, once you build your credibility, once you have good reviews, right, this is where reviews comes in, right? If you can build good reviews in the marketplace, right, I think in my Facebook marketplace I had a little over 400 reviews, so I really focused on that. And then I started doing a lot of Google, right? I started focusing on my Google reviews, right? And just really putting myself out there and telling people what it is that I do, because at the end of the day, marketing is a one way, right? If you start promoting your stuff and you do it consistently, people are going to trust you more, right? So that's the key, right? It's not just doing it one time, but it's doing it multiple times and letting people what it is that you do, right? So I tell people all the time, like, hey, we buy used and damaged iPhones, we'll pay you cash, right? So the more they see this, the more they want to sell you the phone. Or even if you start promoting it on Facebook and people know you, they're gonna want to refer to you because they feel like, oh, they build that trust with you. That's a little bit of how to get started in the phone flipping business, how to buy, sell, and then at the end you can start doing wholesaling a little bit, right? In my next video, I'm going to show you exactly on how I'm going to go out there and find deals and show you how to go from buying devices for $200 and how to sell them to scale up to a little over $1,000 into this business. So if you find this video helpful, make sure to subscribe, man. I'm going to drop more value and try to help